Cool. Hey,
So
Rick, did I get your do you see the thing I copied and pasted? Capital gains should be taxed at the same rate of income to reduce wealth inequality?
yeah, yeah. I've always struggled with like coming up with
Cool.
names, putting
Well,
into
yeah,
words.
this is absolutely fine, and street epistemology, I personally really like to go for claims people are maybe not entirely sure about and not aren't really attached to, because the critical thinking component of this isn't attached to how hard you think so.
Right,
And
right.
then some people, once they get the whole critical thinking down really well, they end up then reaching for those things on the top shelf
Mhm.
later. It's fine.
Yeah, right
Yeah.
on. So, how do I say your name? Is it Dali?
Dolly. Uh-huh.
Dali?
I'm named after the painter with the mustache.
Yeah,
I
Salvador.
I used to have my mustache up,
Very nice.
and that's where the first name came from. And the
Cool.
last name Sadhna is one from years ago when I was religious, and I took on the Sanskrit word for keeping spiritual focus into your daily practice.
Mhm.
And these days, I still do all of that. I just define spiritually different.
Yeah, that's fair. That's kind of how I feel about lots of religion. I always say that I lost my religion but held on to my faith, and faith is
Yes.
obviously like a charged word, but
Yeah. Sure.
to me, it's like a belief in the universe and
Oh yeah.
make an understanding of it.
There's so many definitions of faith that I strongly resonate with. I don't use it to describe myself. I use the other terms
Hmm.
that would be the overlapping terms just to avoid confusion. But
Yeah,
I'm perfectly willing to admit that I have much faith in my family, in my wife, in myself,
yeah,
in you.
yeah. Right on. And the street epistemology link kept on popping up, and I'm like, that is something I would like to talk about sometime.
Sure.
But
You tell me. You get to drive this.
well, I'm good on doing this, but
Mhm.
I I just struggle with like coming up with a claim
Mhm.
when it's like a web of beliefs
Totally.
that are, and like some of it's not provable. Like it
Mhm.
makes the most sense to me logically. Um, so really, yeah, I mean, ultimately, take it or leave it. It's up to each individual. But this uh, philosophy I can use to apply to how things work in the world, and you know works for me. But I would love for someone to be able to dig into that at some point and
Let's
help
do
me
it.
find a claim or whatever. But
Yeah. I'm totally into exploring what kind of claims are good to explore and how. Um, there's a there was a lot of motion that happened in 20 with Rom and myself, where we introduced how to approach claims that were not fact based, that were entirely subjective and opinion based. And I think we really expanded the gamut of what street epistemology can cover. Now we no longer spend very much time editing claims down to what we know how to handle. We
oh,
we can really take almost anything and do the analysis without worrying about whether or not we're talking about physical reality. If you say you prefer chocolate ice cream, we can analyze that with you.
right, yeah. But like chocolate ice cream is still like saying that I prefer chocolate ice cream is still a claim. And so
Sure.
like I don't even know how to like which parts of my philosophy are a claim. It's almost like I'd be better off just explaining it all to someone and having
Sure.
them figure out what
Happy to do
part.
that too. If you'd like, I can drop that back out of the front and say, I open it to you for any exploration you'd like to do, and I can do not the strict SE recipe, but just reflect and use SE with you to anything you like.
I think I think maybe we stick with the capital gains for now because it feels simpler, and if it's something that I speak about more often,
Good,
you
good,
know, it,
good.
it's it's one of those things that I kind of always push towards and try to make people aware of.
Yes,
I'm not taking much active
understood.
steps beyond that, to like get involved politically. Um,
you're
but
getting involved politically by even talking about something that people might vote on, and I
yeah,
praise that. I think that
right.
is pro-social. Please do it.
Um, so
Yeah,
I could be wrong though. So
yeah,
I'm
you totally could be, and I don't know, and I'm gonna try to come at this like I don't know, and even ask questions that you think I might obviously know the answers to. So let me start with definitions because that's the most obvious. Capital gains taxation or taxation relating to capital gains is somehow distinct from other taxation like income. This is not like value added tax or sales tax or property tax. This is about income. It's a subset, yes?
yes, it's
Please speak to that. Please speak to that, how capital gains is a distinct subset of income.
so capital gains is typically from when you purchase an asset and it appreciates in value,
Mhm,
and you realize those gains when you sell the asset.
mhm.
Um, and that could be a house, it could be stocks. Um, it's anything that
Sure.
has value, but it just appreciates in value for various market reasons.
Yes.
Um, in Canada,
Mhm.
it is taxed at only 50% of it is considered taxable income.
I
So, which
see.
means if you make $60,000, like let's say you invest $100,000
Yes.
and then a year later, 2 years later, you sell it for $60,000 profit. So you
Yes.
sell it for 160,000. So you
Yes.
just made $60,000.
Whether this is stock or real estate or, a bond, wouldn't well,
Yeah.
okay, maybe bonds with interest are different.
We,
So, let me put that aside.
I don't know enough.
Stock and real estate are the examples. Good enough, yes?
Yes, I think so.
Good enough.
And I'm willing to admit that like I don't know
That's
all
fine.
about
We don't need to be very specific in order to have an opinion about a thing and not know all the footnotes and nuance.
right.
It's fine. Go ahead.
And so you make $60,000
Yeah,
in Canada. We have a 50% inclusion rate, so which means 30,000 is taxable income for you.
understood.
So when you're so really like let's say you made $60,000 that year and that's all you made, but it's only taxed on 30,000, which means
Yes.
you're like near the poverty line. So really, your first 18,000 is tax free. So
Mhm.
you're paying tax on $12,000 when you made 60,000 without actually trading your time for money. You weren't
Yes.
actually working.
Right. You were trading opportunity cost and risk for that money.
You're trading money for money. And so yeah, the
Yes.
opportunity cost of being able to invest that money elsewhere,
Mhm.
which you would invest it elsewhere, which would also have capital gains or dividends or whatever. Um, Dividends are a bit different because they're taxed from the corporation first. But
Sure.
so gain you gain that money personally from just the increase in value of the asset that you owned, as opposed to working and trading time for money. And so, thing is, like time is finite. We can always make more money. We can't make more time. And
Okay.
so, what that says is that we give a discount to people that have enough money that they don't
Yes.
have to trade their time for money anymore. They have
Understood.
so much money that they can invest it and it can grow, and they deserve a 50% tax break,
Okay.
is how it seems
I'd
to work.
I'd I'd like to imagine this is a outsider test, and, usually I wouldn't do outsider tests until after the reason, but it works perfectly for setting this up ahead of time.
Okay.
I want to imagine Rick Prime and Rick A and Rick B. Neither of them are you, but they're almost exactly like you. They're like clones of you, or they're twin brothers or something like that, and they have very different lives. Maybe they were adopted into different families. One of them invested all of their efforts from adulthood until 30. or something like that in uh, an ordinary labor career and built up savings enough to buy that investment,
Mm.
whatever that is. Doesn't really matter. You can choose if you like. The other went to education and invested a great deal, and at 30 was saddled with significant educational debt, whether that was from partial scholarship or whether that was just debt from having supported themselves, and however, in any case. So Rick A, Rick B, one of them has a bunch of money and they worked in labor for it and pay tax on that, pay tax on all of the income once, right?
Right.
This other person hasn't paid much tax at all, owes quite a bit of money, and is now going into a more lucrative field, Rick B.
Okay.
Uh, and they're going to pay tax on all the money. They're not going to get any of the capital gains. Big B doesn't get any capital gains. Rick A is from 40 to 50 living entirely on the capital gains.
Okay.
Okay. Do you see this as fair?
I don't see it as fair
Okay.
because I guess my belief is that one person is contributing more to the economy
Hmm.
and is um, trading their time for money.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and while person A is able to, they made investments and
Yes.
they're smart. They played the game the way that you
Yes.
should play the game. Not
Hmm.
putting anyone down for doing that. It's the right thing to
Sure.
do. Um, there's risk with that, but there's also the reward of making the capital gains. And if you lose, then a capital loss, which is a tax break.
Yeah.
So I just don't see why there should be a discount on the tax paid on that.
Yes.
Like you made $60,000, great, you did that, and you didn't have to work for that money.
Yes.
Um, so awesome, but you
Okay.
should be taxed on it in the same way that if you
Very
should.
good. So in your blinded John Rawls, this is a veil of ignorance direct. Do you know the reference, John Rawls' veil of ignorance? Okay, just real quickly for the audience. John Rawls suggested that we would form our best possible world, our ideal societies, if we want to decide how things should be done, by blinding ourselves as to what role we would play in that society and pretend that we would just be born into it and roll the dice as to where on whatever social stack we make would be. We're just going to be a random person in there, and we got to have to go live that life. So he suggests we have a veil of ignorance as to what role we would play, and then set up a system that we would be willing to roll the dice to become a person in.
Hmm.
This is what this is that thing that I'm doing with the Rick A and B. So now with Rick A and B, they both started at 20, and they both worked in labor, paying income tax on all of their labor until they were, oh, sorry, one of them did education for 10 years, and he worked for 20 years from 30 to 50. Both Ricks, I'm going to judge at 50.
Okay.
You good? Now, Rick B worked the same number of years, worked the same number of hours, the same kind of effort for their 20 years,
But
and
just
then
delayed 10 years.
earned what Rick B worked from 20 to 40, and then capital gains from 40 to 50.
Gotcha. I
Okay.
think that was Rick A.
That was Rick B, the one who did
Oh,
capital gains.
okay.
Rick
Rick
A
B.
went to education. We can
Okay.
swap them, doesn't matter. Rick A went to education for 10 years. Obviously, that's significant work. And then 20 years of labor to get to 50. In both cases, they have made, pick a number, 500,000? I don't know, whatever. whatever might be a reasonable number, half a million, million, pick a number. Now, in the case of Rick A, they had to earn later, they had to pay a lot of interest on debt
Mhm.
catching back up. So inflation hurts Rick A. Rick B earned his money earlier, and inflation reduced the value of their asset by some factor. Yes?
Well, typically people invest in things that appreciate, even though like
Yeah,
inflation would actually, in a
right.
way,
So if
appreciate the
they
value.
bought something for 100K, and maybe more than one thing, but they bought something for 100K and it becomes worth 160K. And in real dollars, that's how much? 10 years? How much how much is inflation? Uh is that 20-30% less?
I wouldn't be able to do that
Don't know. Okay.
quick math. I can if I
Right,
well,
right. And the actual number is not the is not the thing I'm digging for. I'm wondering how inflation in these cases of the two Ricks should affect what would be the fair, proper capital gains in your case. You're saying 100% and the current state is 50%. Do you find 100% to be the right answer, or do you want to put some offset for inflation in the question? Or do you want to put offset for inflation would lead you to the other direction? Or are there other things about the capital gains and maybe the interest paid in the one case and not the interest paid in the other case that would offset you in the other direction? I don't want to give you the answer. I'm very interested in what you come up with. Is it 100%? Is it wiggled on either side? Are there reasons pushing you in both directions?
um, I think when we bring inflation into it and interest paid and stuff like that, like it certainly complicates because it's not the same across the board as far as investments go. Because like, you know, if you bought a house 5 years ago,
Yep.
it's nearly doubled in value at this point, at least
Yes.
where I live in
Yes.
Victoria, BC. And so, um,
I'm moving soon for that reason.
oh yeah,
Yeah, my husband's house that he's lived in for a little over 20 years has more than tripled in value,
yeah,
partially because of encroaching much taller development permissions in the local area, and therefore more than just even. So that's really cool. So we're moving to another place that he's not planning to play capital gains on because he's a buy and hold kind of investor,
right,
and we'll be renting out this house for more money than that other place that we can live in just as comfortably.
nice, yeah. And so typically, like at least in Canada, you don't pay capital gains on your primary residence.
Yes.
So it's more about
Oh, so there's an additional exclusion that is like the primary residence forgiveness of um, interest on real estate loans here. I may be getting some of that a little bit wrong, but I know that for one property owner's primary residence, they don't have to pay taxes on the interest they pay on their real estate loan.
sorry, can you say that again? Where are you
Um,
based?
I'm
You're
in
in
Los Angeles.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
And sorry, say that again.
Yeah, yeah. So, here we have mortgage interest, um, deduction on taxes. We don't have to pay taxes on the money that we paid in mortgage interest on our primary residence,
Oh, yeah,
not on secondaries. So, if you've got secondary real estate going on, usually you encapsulate that in a corporation,
right.
but the primary one is personal for tax reasons.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Anyway, please continue.
Um, yeah, I guess it certainly ties to housing
Mhm.
specifically because of how crazy it's gotten. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I would like to see
Personal housing real estate is very much subsidized by my government.
by what? Sorry.
personal housing real estate is very much subsidized by my government
Oh my God.
through that mortgage interest uh,
Right.
deduction.
But I would also argue investment real estate is subsidized by the capital gains.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely, absolutely.
um, and like, like to me, the ideal world, which I haven't fully fleshed out, but I would think if you own more than one property uh, that you or your family doesn't live in,
Hmm.
the taxes should be much higher on that.
Yeah, I agree.
So you can have,
That should be a business investment entirely. I'm really okay if a person only gets any of those benefits on their primary residence, and obviously they can bump that around, but maybe not more often than once a year, whatever.
yeah, in Canada, I think you can't sell it. Like you have to own the property for at least a year, I believe, before you can
Yeah,
sell it.
sounds
Um,
entirely
yeah, and because
proportionate.
you're moving into another house when it's your primary residence. Um,
Yeah,
but if you're an investor, let's just say you have a bunch of money. Say you've got $20 million, whatever.
yeah,
Um, you could buy, and you're just looking for ways to grow your money. So you maybe own a couple houses. You're looking at this other house to buy.
yeah,
It's $1 million.
yeah,
So you put down a 20% down payment.
yeah.
So that's $200,000.
Mhm.
The next year, it's worth 1.1 million. I
Yeah,
mean, it's been going up by more than 10% in recent years, but let's just say that. So
yeah. With
after a
real
year, it's
estate, it's
worth,
a pretty steady trend.
yeah, like, well, in the past like 5-10 years specifically, in my location, it's gotten crazy.
Yeah.
Um, I imagine it's probably always been crazy in LA for the last like 20,
Oh,
30
in
years.
LA, it's absolutely insane, and, that I'm living in an old Victorian house on a hill in Los Angeles is completely not an appropriate financial strategy.
Hmm,
It's a series of events that led to things,
yeah.
and it would have been a better choice for us to have moved a decade sooner.
Hmm,
Though, with the apartment house down the hill, not very far, maybe it was the right choice.
yeah.
Seems to be turning out okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It all
Yeah.
works out. Um, so you buy $1 million house
Mhm.
with $200,000 down. The rest is the bank's money. A year
Yes.
later, it's worth 1.1 million.
Yes.
You sell it.
Mhm.
You just made $100,000. You just made 50% of your investment back
Yes.
using the bank's
Yes.
money. Um,
Okay, using the bank's money and that you were at some shared liability of losing your entire investment at a risk that was 5 times higher than than the value, because you were gonna lose if the house went down by 20%, you're completely underwater. You follow? So
um,
you've 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 5x'd your risk to 5x your gain.
right.
Okay.
But
And
also,
your opportunity cost is that your borrowing capacity was pegged at 1,000,000 with the understanding that the real estate was the collateral. So, maybe that's not proportional.
right.
Go
So
ahead.
yeah. Um, so if it's a smart investment, the house might go down in value, but it's
Right.
still a place where someone can live. You can still rent out. It just
Yeah.
means you hold
And
on to it
and
for long.
during that time, you had to insure it, and you had to deal
Yeah.
with natural disasters, and you had to deal with maintenance, although easily that was covered under the cost of using the house or the rent you're not paying because you're not somewhere else. So, easy to throw that in an entirely different bucket of your cost of living.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm,
Because like the rent covers all that stuff, and
mhm.
um, but like what you're saying about the risk is true. But if you lose money, then it's a write off. So it's less risk, but
Yeah,
also the government. doesn't want the housing prices to go down. That's the middle
Right.
class. They
The
voted.
government is actively subsidizing and monkeying with the market really hard
They want it
to
to the
force
prices to
yeah. Mhm.
go up or stay neutral. They never want the prices to go down. They're terribly afraid of that, and they'll take
Yes.
actions.
For lots of good obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Making
So
real estate an unusually good investment in the long run.
for if you started early enough, for sure.
In the
So
long run.
you know, I mean,
Has
yeah.
to be in the long run.
Um, so really, that greatly reduces the risk. But let's say you still have that risk, but it paid off. You made $100,000 in 1 year, and it took you maybe a week of work, actual work, doing all the paperwork and all that, whatever. Maybe it took longer than that. Being a
Did Rick
landlord,
A take a proportionate risk?
um, doing the education, there's certainly a risk that perhaps there is no work in that field, or they went into a field that um, they were more in love with, that there just wasn't as much
Yeah.
work there.
I've
and
seen it happen a lot.
and when
People end
people
up getting a lot of education and then not working in the field that their degree is in.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, and there's like a lot of people that make that argument, well, they deserve this tax break because they're taking on risk as an investor. But a
Yeah.
lot of things are risk. Like if you're a painter, someone might not buy your painting.
Totally. Very much.
Do you deserve a 50% tax break?
That's up to your
Maybe
values.
if you're a contractor, well, there might be asbestos in the wall you didn't realize. Do you deserve a 50% tax break because there was risk? So
Yep.
like
Maybe.
like the risk reward part is that you get the reward. So you made $100,000. So just get taxed on that 100,000 as
Yeah.
opposed to only being taxed on 50,000, because like you still have all the money after taxes. So if you made
Yeah.
100,000, you still have like 82,000 after
Sure,
taxes.
sure.
That's great. Fundamentally, I guess it gets down to this idea of where wealth inequality comes from. Because if I wanted to design a system to create wealth inequality, I would
Mhm.
say when you have more money,
Yep.
you lose less of it. You pay less
Yes.
tax. And
Yes.
that's what this seems to be. If you have so much money that you have some to spare that you can invest it, which
Mhm.
I argue everyone should do, um, then you deserve to pay half the tax. In America, it's not the same as us with the 50% inclusion rate.
Okay.
I believe it's set tiers of if you make this much in capital gains, it's taxed at this. And it actually ends up working out to be a little bit better. Normally you're taxed less than half, depending on how much you made in capital gains.
Sharpie.
Okay.
Outside of your view, I'm writing down my confidence
Mm,
in your claim.
okay.
You may ask for when you want me to display that, and it's in my whole card for right now.
Okay. I've never
And
seen that done.
yeah, basically, this is if I were in desk in front of you, I have two little knobs that say, "What's your confidence?" And so right now, I'd like you to express your confidence uh, currently in your claim. Now, this is just the claim that capital gains, if taxed at the same rate of income, would reduce income inequality, not the claim that there are other knock on effects, which I want to talk about next. So
Right.
tell me your confidence on the core claim on its face with no entailments.
Um, there might be other um, method, like not just capital gains, but other things that fall into this idea of taxing
Mhm.
money that makes money less as
Yes,
opposed to taxing.
absolutely.
So,
Obviously, the government's controls that are about inflation are probably a greater impact. If you have more wealth and you have it stored in any kind of dollars and inflation occurs, you lose wealth directly. If you have it stored in things that are not dollars, you do not lose wealth. So if a poor person has a bank account and inflation jumps up, that's bad.
Mm.
If a company has a lot of money in cash while they're in a growth cycle, that hurts them a lot. If a
Yeah.
company is in a very low interest rate situation, things are very different. So the recent fluctuation of interest rates has an enormous effect. I completely agree, and I think it's separate from the question of whether capital gains,
Hmm.
if treated as just the same as other income, would reduce wealth inequality.
I guess. Um, I guess what
I
I'm
am very
trying to
verbose.
claim is that taxing money that makes money
Yeah.
equal to taxing time that makes money
Hmm.
would reduce wealth inequality.
I agree.
Capital gains is the main avenue that I know of how that works. So to but I would still agree that yes, I think capital gains itself being taxed equal
Hmm.
to the same rate as income, trading your time for
Yes.
money, would reduce wealth inequality. And I would say my confidence is about 80% because I'm never 100% on anything. Um,
Yes.
and
80%. Thank you.
you, you know,
Hmm.
you don't know what you
Okay.
don't know,
All right. What's
basically.
the next biggest factor that is not capital gains in the effect on wealth inequality in either direction in your mind?
Can you say that differently?
So I'm looking for the next factor that influences wealth inequality
Hmm.
in your mental model, in your understanding of your society, that is not capital gains, but would be if capital gains were either solved or left alone, what would be the next thing that you might want to move the needle on to affect wealth inequality?
Um, I realize that I guess I should have stipulated something with my
Mhm.
belief on this. When because I would say the actual income tax rate. So
Okay.
my belief is that capital gains should be taxed equal,
Yes.
which will raise the amount of money that government is making, which we don't want. I'm sure they do,
Hmm.
but let's say it's the government's take is revenue neutral. So any money made off of capital gains increase would go to reduce the income tax of the lower
Okay.
tax brackets, which could also reduce some social program needs. Because
Yes.
if and I guess one of the biggest things that I think of out of that, it means you don't have to necessarily push for higher minimum wage, which
Okay.
it's people are pretty quick to think like of minimum wage. They think of like Walmart and stuff, but
Yes.
it's also like small and medium businesses. So that's
Hmm.
basically putting the pressure onto those businesses to raise
Yes.
their prices. And they're typically selling products to people of all levels that are now spending more money, which increases inflation. So instead, let's just take less money from the people making, less than 40,000 or less than 50,000. Like let's just
Okay.
reduce the income tax rate
So
for those
so
lower.
you would like to take the difference in income from changing capital gains to changing the marginal tax rates that and much more toward adjusting reduction of load on the low end and leaving the load the same on the high end.
Yes,
Okay.
you'd see where that works out. Like I think to actually vote and get it passed, you'd want people making like individuals making 70, 80K to like break even,
Okay.
maybe.
Okay.
Um,
So that your fulcrum's about there and you would like to tilt the fulcrum at about the 78K level, and if they're below that, they're getting less load, and above that, they might be getting the same or greater load depending on how you're looking at the numbers. They'd be
yeah,
getting a greater load because of the capital gains, and
yes.
maybe the numbers would be the same for overall income with just fewer loopholes to
Yeah, so
reduce
they'd be
the
taxed at the same rate,
okay.
but because they've got so much money, a large portion of that money could be made from capital gains, and so that's taxed more. So it's at the same effective
Very good. Very good.
rate. Okay.
Okay. I'm going to try to steelman back your epistemology in relates to your primary claim
Okay.
and see if I got it right. Now, these are the reasons behind your reasons. These are the reasons that I think that you think your reasons are important and good. So, first, I see you having the goal of kindness to the people on the bottom end as primary. I see kindness and compassion uh, toward those as the driving goal for wanting to reduce wealth inequality. Do I get that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, good. Next, that wealth inequality is driven by these asymmetric strategies that the government uses partially to enhance the economy and whatever strategies they're using and so on, and partially because they're wanting to prop up the real estate market and prop up investment and encourage something in the economy, and therefore are giving a boon to people willing to uh, take risks, push off the use of their wealth until later, and invest back into society uh, with their resources and wait for later to pull them back out. I get that about right?
Yes, that's mostly right. I would kind of push back on just a little bit of the logic
Please.
there that they
Yes.
use, and it makes
Uh-huh.
sense on the surface. Like, yeah, we give this tax break so that people invest.
Uh-huh.
If you have like spare money, like you said, you
Yes.
lose it if it's in the bank. Why wouldn't you invest it anyways? Like,
Well, you would. They're encouraging it. They're wanting to prop it up. They're wanting to sweeten the deal. They're
but
wanting to
when
add money to your thing to make a risk that you wouldn't have taken to be one that you will.
I I would question.
And hope I'm not pushing back. I'm just expanding on
No,
what you're saying,
no,
I hope. Yeah.
yeah, no, this is great. I would just question that logic because it
Mhm.
is definitely said a lot. Sometimes it feels a little bit like Reagan economics, like just like trickle down effect, and
Mhm.
like, yeah, I can see how that could be true. But like if I had, um, you know, uh, a stash of extra money, me knowing, hey, I'm gonna want more money in the future,
Mhm.
I would want to invest it regardless of how it's taxed. Like,
Mhm.
unless like I'm gonna lose money off of it, like from the taxing. But to me, it just, I can see it as a mindset maybe to break people out of the depression age,
Yeah,
when
sure.
it was like
Motivation is huge.
thing like at that point in
Motivation
time.
affects the economy way more than real anything.
Yeah, but like the motivation to get more money. But like I'm thinking, after the Great Depression, people were in a scarcity mindset and would maybe like, hey, let's just put this cash under my bed,
Yeah.
or whatever, and just like want to
Yeah.
hold on to that wealth. So that would be like a good
Inflation
push.
and bank runs absolutely scared the shit out of the common man.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And we saw it happen. We saw it maintained for generations. People born in those eras and the children of people born in those eras still have depression mindset that a lot of people are spending a lot of time in self-help trying to get them out of.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess you were correct in your second steel man,
Mhm.
but you slid in some of the motives behind why the government's doing what they're doing,
Right.
and 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 I would just question how
Good,
true
good,
those
good.
motives.
So that wasn't part of your motivation. So if you take the part of my steel man that was useful, thank you for that feedback. Uh, do you have any change in your confidence? If you just look at those reasons, and maybe any that you would like to add, I don't want to limit you at all. I'm more interested in understanding you than getting the right words exactly. Uh, if you take those reasons, is 80% the right number for you?
my reasons being uh, wanting to
Yeah,
help
if you
out
look at your
people.
goals,
Yeah.
if you look at your goals and you look at your claim,
Hmm.
does your claim address your goals proportionately? What confidence do you lead just considering those goals in that claim?
I'm sorry. I think I just might have lost it there. I'm trying to.
Just put yourself in the gestalt of a person whose goals are what we steel man. And if you look at just that, how confident should you be in the claim that capital gains being taxed equally would uh, positively influence your goal for reducing wealth inequality?
Um, I guess I'm not sure what the second Steelman was.
Let's see. The two parts of the steel man. One was that the first part was your goal to of
Compassion.
kindness,
Yeah.
compassion, and
Yeah.
the second one was capital gains are an asymmetry that directly affects the wealth against the people with the least wealth.
Right. Okay. I see. Um, so I feel like it hasn't changed my
Okay, good.
confidence.
Thank you. That's the answer. It
Okay.
hasn't changed. It's about 80%. Good.
Sorry.
The
So long.
goal here was to have you internally reflect on your confidence given your stuff and to see if further introspection changed it. And didn't? Great. Fantastic. Thank you for this conversation. I've enjoyed it. I want to hear you out fully, and I have no further questions. Would you like to oh, before I reveal, side question. From our conversation today, do you have a notion of my position? Do you have a notion of what my confidence is that's hidden from you?
Um, I don't think you've given anything away that would maybe lead one way or
Hmm?
another.
Do you have an
I,
intuition?
I would guess also around 80%, but I don't know. I'm really 99.6.
That's 3 sigma. That's 3 standard deviations confidence. The 3 standard deviations from the mean. I am very confident.
Okay. So I also am very confident. I just don't. I want to leave space. I
Mhm.
haven't
Do
been
you
able.
wanna be wrong 20% of the time in this? Do you think you're 20% wrong?
I don't think I'm 20% wrong. That's a good way to.
Okay. I'll leave it to you then. Thank you for this conversation. Lead out. Summarize for me.
Um,
Tell me everything that I didn't ask.
Everything you didn't ask. I guess something that you touched on that I thought of. It was more part of the web of beliefs. Um, like you touched on how people can be born into different situations, and not only does that include time and place and and family and all that, it's also you know mental capacity if we're
Mhm.
realistic about it, and
Yes.
so uh having a higher tax on the lower wage earners is like in a way sometimes even more unfair because they might not have like there may already be struggling in life and not have the mental capacity to reach those higher levels, and so it just pushes them down that much harder, that much stronger. um and so you're right, it's about compassion it's understanding that I could have been anywhere on that
Mhm.
spectrum, and
Yeah.
even though it can work favorably for me, I don't think that's fair. I'm still going to do it because that's the game and that's the smart thing to do with your money.
Yes.
But I don't think that that's a good. system to have personally.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm very, very aligned with you on that particular value. I'm a lefty, earthy, crunchy liberal from California, and that's what I was born into. No, I think I've actually come at that from as an adult. I was not born into that. I was born into a right wing fundamentalist missionary school that outgrouped the Catholics down the street. So I came to that as an adult, not as a youth.
I guess like I think I should be higher in my confidence. I haven't come across anyone with a good argument against it. The
Mhm.
only thing that I don't know enough about, but it is a serious consideration, is how that works out in retirement.
Yes.
Because some people in retirement, they're on a fixed income.
Yep.
Um,
I'm
yeah,
retired on a fixed income, and my relationship with money is completely different. The poverty level that you talk about, I live at half of that very comfortably and have been able to spend about $1,200 so far this year on toys for myself
nice.
because I live an otherwise almost monkish life
Mm,
and am very, very careful with my money.
yeah. So
Mhm.
so as long as like the math equals out, that
Yeah.
we're not hurting those people,
Mhm.
um, because they would be like on the lower um,
Mhm.
lower income earners if they're on fixed income. And I'm not quite too sure how that works with capital gains once you turn it into you change. I guess we have RSPs, and then you change it into our ESP, I think, or I don't quite remember, but I'm not quite too sure how that works when the money starts coming out, if that's taxed as capital gains. So I'm aware that there's some things that I don't know, but I still haven't been able to talk to anyone that has
Mhm.
made a valid argument for me. Um,
I uh
so I should be more confident in myself, perhaps.
I am by no means a financial analyst. I did spend my working career paying the taxes for my labor as a programming, accounting adjacent systems for companies.
Mm,
So I'm very familiar with the lingo and the laws
yeah.
for how corporate stuff is done. And I've assisted a lot of people making spreadsheets about their financial planning and taxes and I am by no means an expert, but I'm probably better than the mean.
Yeah.
So if you would like my assistance and you find somebody, I would absolutely love to have a show where I try out like this kind of a format. Let's see if this works. Where I'm speaking to the two of you and moderating and mediating and filling in the beautiful, not a debate. I don't mean that kind of thing, more of like an actual exploration of the technical things. And I would probably grab uh, someone who was uh, an actual financial analyst to at least look over our shoulder and comment at the end. I'm thinking of a few, see if they would be into it.
Yeah. I can't think of many people that would argue against me. We're all kind of in our own little bubble. um,
Yeah, wouldn't need to argue against in this case if you could find somebody who would even just um, let's say a financial person who would suggest that you use the current system of capital gains and how it would benefit you, whether or not they are pushing back on whether the capital gains are righteous or fair in the moment. They
mm,
wouldn't have to be against you. They would only have to be capable of the nuanced discussion
mm,
of when you would want to choose one versus the other, when the risk profiles and the all those words that we used.
mm, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'll be able to come up with someone like, and like I said, like I think
There's
it's,
only 8 billion of us, so you know.
well, the world's uh, a lot smaller in LA. I'm using that term
Yeah.
backwards, but like,
Oh,
hey,
there's so many people close to me, it's amazing. I
yeah,
can reach 10 people in an hour's drive. I'm sorry, 10,000,000 people in an
that's
hour's drive.
okay. And like where I am, we're in like the top, well, not the top, kind of bottom left, bottom west corner of Canada, but like we're not on the way to anything. So there's not like a lot of industry here, no major shipping routes and stuff. Like there are ships coming to Vancouver, but it's just it feels like everywhere is far away.
Yes.
Whereas like if you're in LA and you see a show on TV, like I wanna go to that restaurant.
Yeah,
Let's go
totally,
tonight.
totally.
You know?
There's so much filming around here that it's actually a pain to do SE here
Mm.
because in this county, if you put a tripod touching the ground, they hit
Mm.
you for a filming permit that costs $600 a day for nonprofits.
Oh wow.
They will give you a pass on the actual permit fee, but not a pass on the 8-hour a day, $57 an hour monitor to watch you.
Wow.
Oh, man. So we set up tables and have little clamps on the table for the cameras and a little cart with a clamp on, and they and suddenly get past their loophole. Now, is that a fair loophole? Hmm.
Yeah. Um, I have to run because I have to go to the washroom, but this has
Thank
been
you.
a pleasure. All
Thank
right.
you. This has been fantastic. Do I have your encouragement and, permission to, publish?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been great, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll probably do this today.
Awesome.
Okay
Thanks,
then.
Alex.
Bye-bye.